I'm making kombucha today, and so I thought I'd show you my recipe, my method for making it. Kombucha is fermented tea. I'm sure most people have heard of it or seen it in a grocery store or probably drank it before, but it's really delicious and a lot more affordable to make at home, and I think it's really, really good, the homemade kind versus at least some of the store-bought varieties. So I'll get started and show you how I make this. It's a double batch that I'm going to be making that makes about 6 quarts, which is a gallon and a half. And if you wanted to do just a single recipe, basically, you could do a 3-quart and do half of everything that goes into it, but using the same method. To start with, I have boiling water. I boiled 2 quarts of water. And then I'm going to add 2 cups of sugar to that. I'm using just a granulated organic sugar. And so I'm going to pour that in there. And then I will cover this and let it boil for 5 minutes just to dissolve all that sugar. And then after that I'm going to add the tea. And kombucha is a fermented tea. So I use a combination of green tea and black tea, and you could use any combo of the two. I do a little bit more black than green, and that's the ratio that I've found that I like a lot. But you could do all black if you wanted, or you could do a mix or whatever you want to do. So I have over here, these are green tea bags. I just have 4 of those. And then this was loose leaf black tea that I put into these bags, and this is pretty much the equivalent. I put about 3 teaspoons in each bag, which would be the equivalent of about 3 tea bags in each bag, so a total of 6 black tea bags, 4 green tea bags, or 10 tea bags altogether for this double batch, so it would be 5 for the single batch. So after the sugar boils for 5 minutes, I will add the tea bags off the heat and let them steep for 10 minutes, and then I'll pick back up there to show you what I do next. Now that the tea has finished steeping, I will put all the rest of the ingredients together and then let the fermentation process start, and then that will take anywhere between 1 week and probably at the most 3 weeks. Mine usually takes anywhere from a week to 2 weeks, usually closer to the 1 week mark, but sometimes up to 2 weeks. But it could be anywhere from, that would be 7 to 21 days. So I have in this tall glass wide mouth jar, I put 4 quarts of water. So those are the additional 4 quarts to the 2 that I started with that I was boiling. And then I have a wide mouth. And the reason that I'm using this jar, partly for the volume size to make this double batch, but also because you want to use a vessel to ferment your kombucha in that makes it so that the depth of your liquid is not more than the width, just so that the SCOBY that's going to float on top, which is going to ferment it, is able to reach all the way down to the liquid at the bottom. And if you have like for example a 1-gallon jar filled all the way to the almost to the top with a single batch of a 3-quart size, you would have deeper liquid than wide. So in that case, if for some reason the fermentation is not super strong, it could have trouble reaching all the way down to the bottom. But if you have it in a container that is as wide at least as it is deep, or somewhere around there, it'll be easier for it to ferment all of the liquid within that time because it doesn't have to reach all the way down through all that liquid. So I am going to pour in my brewed, sweetened, hot tea mixture into this cold, it's actually room temperature, but colder room temperature water, and that will bring the overall temperature of the liquid that I'm going to ferment down. You want it to be basically between room temperature and body temperature. So not too warm or it will kill the bacteria that we're putting in there, the SCOBY. So that's why I boil just a small amount of the water rather than the whole thing. You could boil your full 6 quarts from the beginning and add everything to that, but then you'll need to wait hours probably for that to cool down before you can add your starter kombucha and your SCOBY to start it fermenting. So I found that doing a third of the amount of water, which in this case is 2 quarts, boiled, and then adding it to additional 2/3 cold plain water works well temperature-wise. So I'm going to pour that in, and then I'll show you what I do next. I now have all 6 quarts of liquid in there with the tea and the sugar in my container. So you can see it just looks like brewed tea, basically. So then I have right here, this is some finished kombucha from my last batch. So I'm going to take and pour in about a cup or so of this as the starter culture that will get things kind of kicked off fermenting, and then after that I'll put in my SCOBY, which is going to float on the top, and then I'll let it do its thing. Alright, so the starter kombucha is going in. You can measure if you want to. I just kind of eyeball about a cup of it. And then I have in this bowl, which is what I store my extra SCOBYs in the fridge, because they will grow as you brew batches. You'll end up with more SCOBYs. So I keep them in this bowl in the fridge. And then I'm just going to take one of those. This is my most recent one, which is getting kind of big but didn't quite separate. You can separate the layers once it gets big enough. But it didn't quite separate for me, so I'll just put that whole thing in there. Sometimes it sinks at first, but that's okay. If it does, it'll eventually float back up to the top as it's fermenting. So that's everything, and then I'm going to cover it. I just have a kitchen towel here that I'll lay over the top, and then to keep it safe from any fruit flies or anything like that, I'll take, this is my DIY large rubber band here, very fancy. You can use a big rubber band or something just to hold this towel down so that nothing can get underneath and in there. So then I'm going to put the towel on it, and then you want to keep it in a place that's out of direct sunlight while it ferments. So just like not directly in front of a window or something like that, but also preferably not in a dark cupboard that never gets opened. So I just find a space on my countertop that is out of direct sunlight but still gets some daylight to it. And then, yeah, like I said, it takes about 1 to 3 weeks, and then you can just start tasting it after the first 7 days, and it'll go from tasting like sweet tea to tasting more and more like kombucha, which will have like a slight, almost vinegary taste. And you can just stop it at whatever point in the process that you like the flavor. And obviously the more that it ferments, the less sugar will be remaining in it, because that sugar will have been converted. But if you don't like it when it gets real sour, then you could stop it a little bit before that point. But that's it, and then I'll show you what it looks like when it is all finished. The kombucha is finished brewing now. This has been 8 days, and like I said, it could take anywhere from 7 to 21 days, but usually mine finishes in about a week to 2 weeks. So here it is. The SCOBY's floating on top, and the kombucha is a lighter color than when we started. It'll lighten as it brews. So I'm going to take out the SCOBY, just lift that out, and I'm going to just store it in a glass bowl, or you can put it in a glass jar in some of the kombucha liquid, and just store it in the fridge if you're not going to use it right away for another batch. And then I'm just going to take the kombucha itself and put it in some, I just like to use canning jars, but any preferably glass containers that you want to store it in that have airtight lids so that you don't lose that bubbliness of it while it's in the fridge. and that's it. And then you can either start another batch with that SCOBY and a little bit of the finished kombucha, or you can store it in the fridge until you're ready to do it at a later time. Here it is, all bottled up and ready to go in the fridge. So if you try this kombucha, leave a comment and let me know if you liked it or if you have any questions, or how it went. You can also find an ingredient list and measurements on our blog, and I'll leave the link for that in the description of this video. And thanks again for watching. Bye!